Celebrate International Nurses Day, and as we know, today of all days, we should really be paying attention to the plight of our nurses as they help us and are in the forefront of dealing with the COVID-19 virus. Well, as the country continues to debate the question of when it would be safe for schools to reopen, children have their say in a webinar held by Media Monitoring Africa. Let's take a live listen in.
We are sitting here in Pretoria, but that school in Lusikisiki has got to translate what we're saying, and it has got to assess the feasibility of doing this, so that if there is no feasibility and there is no possibility, they can quickly troubleshoot through the district offices and through the provincial offices.
Thank you. So, my question.
Okay. I think there's a crossing of lines there, Pagami. Pagamile.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mute myself, to unmute. Yes, we'll get to their questions. You can carry on. They are in next to answer to ask the question.
Yeah, okay. So as I'm saying, we need to decentralize the control and measures around this fairly quickly, so that schools can immediately troubleshoot where there are going to be problems. But we cannot thumbsuck the problems here sitting at national, because we've sent out what the principle is going to be for schools. So the sooner teacher unions work with us, the better. And I think that's the message that should go out even to parent associations and principals associations, that the sooner school management teams go back to school, the better, because they understand the context of their own schools and they will be able to work this out. They know how many maths teachers they have, and amongst those maths teachers, how many can teach grade 12 mathematics. You know, they know what the staff establishment looks like. And so they should be able to advise, and where there are problems, they will raise their hand very quickly to say that, hey, hi, I am in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape and I will have a problem. I've got shortages. What do we need to do? So that districts and provinces can troubleshoot quickly before learners come back to school.
And I think that's a very good point, Leko. And I think some of our teachers and principals that are here will have that chance, will have a little bit of a chance later on to be able to get into the details of what their plans are and what do they anticipate their challenges being. So very good point, and we will pick that up later on when we give some of our principals and other supporting staff members a chance to kind of highlight the on the ground reality that they face as teachers and principals going back to school. We're gonna have can we have a question by Pamela? Pamela, yes, go ahead. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Have you unmuted yourself? Okay, maybe just figure out what's wrong with the sound. We'll move on to the next person and then we'll come back to you. Is that fine? Okay, Rory Sang had a question. Rory Sang, if you're able to hear me, please ask your question.
Yes, I hear you. Now, I wanted to ask, is it true that the department has failed to meet the minimum requirements to ensure safety to avoid contracting COVID-19?
Is it true that the department has failed? It's difficult to say the department has failed because we have not gone back to school, you see. We would have to go through the process first for us to then determine whether we have failed or not. But what we are saying is that the reason why the minister is saying that let's open the administration, but let us not yet open schools because we are not ready to open schools, it's for that reason. We want to avoid a situation where we will fail when you guys go back to school. So it's too early to say if we have failed or not. but we're saying that there are things that we can do to avoid failure.
Okay, I hear you. So another question. Uh, the Minister of Basic Education, Ms. Enjimuteka, said that a central consideration is that the reopening of schools do not contribute to the spread of the coronavirus, but also the academic year is saved. But at what cost?
I think we will go back to the issue that we raised in the initial part of the webinar, where we were saying that there seems to be emerging evidence right now that shows that we as young people who are in school are the least contributors to the virus. And so the fact that we're going to be reopening schools, it should be safe for us, but we can't go in now and say, hey, we are immune to the COVID-19, we're immune to the virus, hey, and we snap our fingers. Like, hey, here we are, we can't say that. We still need to take precaution. And so when we reopen schools, we've got to take precautions so that children do not get infected, because one child getting infected is one child too many. So, colleagues, I don't know how we can stress the importance of self-protection, but also of schools abiding by the regulations and abiding by the standard operating procedures that we have designed for them, and schools really consulting with the guidelines that we have developed for them, so that there isn't much of an impact amongst young people. I also want to stress this, members, to say that we are a responsible government, in the sense that we wouldn't want children to die en masse as well. We don't want a situation where schools are burying one child after another because of COVID-19 infection. So, with that being said, we want to make sure. That's why we're holding back the cart. That's why we're holding back our horses now. We want to make sure that schools are really, really, really ready to protect you, so that even if we go back to school, it is not at your cost, because you asked the question, at what cost? We want to make sure that it is not at your cost or at the cost of your life. That if your life is endangered, rather not go back, and rather give us the space to make sure that the school is ready, so that when you come, you can go back home safe and alive.
Okay, and also I read an article that said the disinfecting of schools countrywide has not even reached 25%, but the government is expecting teachers to report to duty, even though the disinfecting of schools has not even reached 25%, the whole country. What's your take on that?
As I've indicated, members, for the schools to be disinfected, for the equipment to be delivered, school must open. And for the school to open, somebody must open the school. And so we really require that school management teams go back to school, so that they can be there to facilitate and coordinate the disinfection of schools and the arrival of the material. Because if they are not there, we're not going to move from that 25% that you've just mentioned. We've got to be the ones who, we go there, gloves on, mask on, whatever, and we just make sure that when it's time for disinfection of the classrooms, there's someone who's there to watch over. I saw a very good example of this with the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, and big ups to the executive director there, Ms. Kukundebel. She, against all odds, has really encouraged her school management team to go back to school, even though teacher unions are saying that teachers shouldn't be going back because it's unsafe for them. But they've reached a resolution, and they've kind of established a compact or a pact as as a staff establishment of that institution, that they will go back, that as they go back, they will facilitate and coordinate the disinfection of all the classrooms. And from my understanding, now all the classrooms are disinfected, right? And they've already procured the personal protection equipment. And this shows that if the school management team is there, we can progress. But if they're not there, we cannot progress. And right now, I can tell you that institution is ready to receive those girls. The only thing that those girls need right now is for the airways and public transport to be open so that they go back to school. And they're ready to start tomorrow. And the only reason why they're ready to start tomorrow is not because they have money. It's not because of anything. It's because the school management team decided to be committed and devoted to the process.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Shumelo to ask his question, and then we're going to get back to our guest speakers because I also want to give a chance to our principals. Liko's now touching on what different schools or principals or heads are doing practically on the ground to ensure the safety of learners, and I want to also include them in this very important discussion. So can we get the final question from our audience, Shumelo, and then we will get back to our guest speakers, and then give an opportunity to our principals and supporting staff members, supporting school staff members to ask to give their input.
Okay. Hello, my name is Simelo, and my question is that normally at school we have break time, like time to play. So when lockdown is finished, will we still have break time? And what's going to happen to assemblies? We were all squashed into one room.
Very important question around physical distancing, and how does the department plan to tackle this issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question. And I think it relates to the National School Nutrition Program. Is that so? I just confirm that the breakfast that she is referring to is the breakfast offered through the National School Nutrition Program.
I'm not sure. So he was referring to. Are you speaking on behalf of? Speaking in relation to Shumelo's question about.
Yes.
So he was referring to break times. Like, what is the practice going to be now, going back to school? When are they going to have breaks? Are they also going to have school assemblies where people are squashed into one area?
Oh, okay. I heard that as breakfast. So no, I thought it's break time. Sorry. My apologies, colleagues.
No problem.
Break times. Yes. So the standard operating procedures, when you read them, you'll see that one of the things, in fact, even the regulations of this country, and this is the principle that we want to uphold, that the safety and hygiene measures must be upheld in class and outside of class. And so as a result, what we have done as a department, we have suspended all core curricular enrichment, sports and arts activities for that reason. Unfortunately, we know we are taking away from your right to play and be free. But you can't play and be free just for this while that the virus is still among us. As soon as the virus leaves us, we'll then be able to open again the spaces for children to play, for children to have fun, and for children to develop in other areas outside of the classroom. But as it stands, even break times, when you go out, of course, you'll go out because it's a break. You have got to get a body break. You've got to access the ablution facilities and so forth. Even there, everywhere you go, from the moment you get onto the car that goes to school, and from the moment you get off the car and walk inside the school, you uphold the hygiene and safety principles.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's also very important to also highlight the responsibility that lies with the learner to ensure that they are also practicing healthy and safety measures to ensure that they are safe. We're going to go back now to our guest speakers. So Matshidiso, Res, Wati, Joy, and Offense, please give us 2 or 3 of your final questions, and then we have to move. We have to move to our teachers, because I really want to get a sense of what is happening on the ground and what do other teachers and principals and supporting staff have to say about the phasing in of schools. We've heard from national level, and it's very clear on the measures that they are willing to take to ensure the safety of learners. We want to hear what the people that are going to be interacting every day with the learners, what do they have to say? What are the challenges they are assuming will be at the forefront when phasing in of school or when children return? And what is the new norm around working or educating amidst COVID-19? So 2 or 3 questions from our guest speakers, and then we have to move forward to our principals and teachers.
Okay.
So Matshidiso, is that Matshidiso?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, so we've spoken about safety precautions that will be taken at school. And my question is, how will the washing of hands be encouraged during lessons, during classes? Will we be taken out of class every 1 hour to go wash our hands, or what's going to happen with that?
Okay. Right now, at the moment, we are working with Unilever in the implementation of the National School Hygiene Program. Our initial plan was to just make sure that the National School Hygiene Program is expanded across all grades in primary schools, but we're starting with the foundation phase. But what this virus has done was to push us to accelerate the coverage of the National School Hygiene Program beyond the primary schools to reach secondary schools as well. So in the primary school levels, the National School Hygiene Program was happening in grade 1s, and I think it was in grade R's and grade 1s in 2019, 2020, if I'm not mistaken. I speak under correction. So, and this was done through the provision of soap, toothbrushes, and toothpaste to those small children to practice the hygiene habits. And it's done in the life orientation curriculum in that space that deals with personal hygiene and body hygiene. And so now the arrival of the virus has meant that we've got to tweak our messaging so that it does not just talk about hygiene broadly, but it also then situates COVID-19 within the hygiene agenda of life orientation. But when we go to secondary schools, we're going to be dealing with hygiene outside of the classroom, meaning outside of the curriculum as a co-curricular activity. And this is where the agency of young people comes in, because it has got to be a learner-led process and a learner-led initiative for schools. We'll have young people who are capacitated with the knowledge and skills to impart this knowledge to other young people at school. And then we encourage schools to then procure these tap buckets. I'm sure you've seen them, these tap buckets, so that children can practice the washing of hands per classroom. So you won't have a situation where all the learners must now flock to the toilets because everyone needs to wash hands, because we also don't want a stampede. So we are saying that it is important for schools to find innovative and creative ways. And this is just one example. And I know that teachers in their own right and by their very nature are very creative people. They know better how to manage these things at a school level. They know better than us. But we're just proposing that these tap buckets or bucket taps need to be procured, and then they get water, and that water is sitting outside of each classroom with a biggish basin beneath, so that learners can wash their hands as they enter the classroom. If they can't wash hands, you know what the country is saying, that if you can't wash hands, at least you must use a sanitizer. And so in other instances, you'll find that learners are actually going to be washing hands as they get inside the class. And in other instances, you'll find that learners get their hands sanitized as they enter the class.
Thank you very much for that question. I'm gonna give one final chance for our guest speaker to have to ask a question, and then we're gonna go to our supporting staff members and teachers and principals to get feedback from them, and then we can be able to, if we have time, we'll be able to come back and close with another two or three questions from the audience. So one more question from our guest speakers.
My question, I have two questions actually. So with the phasing in of school, a lot of parents are quite reluctant about it and aren't feeling very comfortable with sending their children to school. So even if schools have been sanitized and they're open and everything, a lot of parents are actually feeling quite reluctant and don't want to send their children to school. So what are the measures that government is going to take to ensure parents that schools are safe for their children? Because obviously no parent wants to lose their child. My second question is that what's going to happen to our older teachers that are sick, or that not really sick, but they have diabetes or asthma or anything like that? Will they not be allowed to teach? And if so, will they still receive the income without them teaching? Thank you.
So I think your question. Oh yes, Leko, feel free to directly answer.
I was going to say, Pakamile, that I remember in some of the conversations we've had in the department, a conversation around letting teachers who are over 60 to stay home for now. Phase in period. They say that for now, there's no rush. The 60-year-olds and above must just stay at home for now whilst we're working out a system of getting them back to school, because we know that they are most at risk of infection. So, and the colleague is correct here to say that parents are really worried, because remember, when COVID-19 came, no one said children. They said everyone is at risk. And the evidence of children not being at risk is only coming on recently. And we unfortunately, we are human beings, and we have to acclimatize to this new information that's coming in. And we've got to be assured as parents that, okay, this is true, and, our children are safe. And I think let's not force them and force. Let's journey with the parents nicely. We are learning from the experience of comprehensive sexuality education. When it first came, with all that information that was untrue about comprehensive sexuality education, parents were up in arms. And then what did we do? We journeyed with the parents. We took them through the material. We showed them that whatever you see on social media is not in our own material. This is material that comes from other parts of the world. But when people want to be sensational, they bring it on social media and they make it all be like, hey, your children are being over-sexualized and so forth. And many parents, when they went through the material, they were like, this is ITMOS. It's about goal setting. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your rights. And there's very little that is spoken about sex in comprehensive sexuality education. Quite frankly, this is what we need. And then parents turned tables and sat on the same table with us, because parents just need to be assured first. And you need to journey with them at their own pace. And once they get an understanding of this, then they'll be able to work with us. So let's just say that it's still fresh to be judging parents at the moment. We understand why they are shocked by this whole thing. But I think as we move along and as they hear this evidence that's coming on board, and as parents are sensible people, and I know that they want their children to go back to school, but they also want their children to be safe. So over time, we will be on the same side of the table with parents.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give a chance now to
All right, so that's a conversation that's happening there. It's a webinar where, of course, learners have been given a chance to have their say as we're adults having conversations about them. It's good to see that they are being included as well there. We're continuing that debate, asking that pertinent question of whether or not it is safe to reopen our schools. Of course, the Basic Education Minister, Angie Mashika, has said that the reopening of schools wouldn't necessarily mean the rising of numbers in the COVID-19 pandemic, but that schooling must indeed continue so that we don't lose the year. And of course, some important information we got there about the Oprah Winfrey Academy School for Girls that's in Henley on Klip, where the teachers have basically gone back in order to make sure that the schools are sanitized, the classes are sanitized, and they're sort of packed between the staff and the teachers to disinfect all the classes. So we're hearing that school is actually in fact ready to go back to school. But as we know, that's a school that is quite well resourced by Oprah Winfrey herself. So school management deciding to be committed to that. Some very important questions coming from the students. I mean, it might sound like a funny thing, but a little student there asking, what about break time and what about assembly? And these are the issues that are important to them. I mean, break time and assembly, would they then be adhering to social distancing? So some pertinent questions being asked by the young learners there. And of course, asking another question which I thought was quite important about how there will be an enforcement of washing of hands, how it will be encouraged. One of the students quite concerned about that. But we're hearing that there is a national hygiene program that's set to be extended in partnership with Unilever. So those are some of the conversations that are happening. And of course, we'll continue to bring you some sort of feedback from that. Let's take a short break. Do stay with us.